three rules that I want to talk about. These are rules that you probably won't hear about in business school or anything like that. And there's probably a lot more rules, but I'm calling them three rules because it's what I got for you right now. Anyways, the three rules are somewhat inspired by my experiences being in business and being in real estate and talking to others. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a second when I get to rule number 3. So the first rule is this: follow your gut. You hear it all the time, right? I was talking to my uncle who is retired now. He's almost 80 years old, and he's a long-time developer in real estate and what have you, and he has decades and decades, a lifetime of experience in working some pretty complicated deals and building neighborhoods and real estate and what have you. And he told me a couple of years ago when him and I went on a 2-week road trip. We spent 2 weeks together in a car. We went all the way up to Tuktoyaktuk, the Arctic Ocean. So it was like, what are we going to talk about for 2 weeks? And we talked mostly about business and family and stuff. And it was fascinating. But that was one thing he told me. And I've already kind of known about that. However, he put it in a whole new perspective. And most recently, see, my wife and I, we own some real estate. And I call this our pension. This is our retirement fund because we're self-employed. And I like real estate. I've been quite good at real estate investing. And we have a bunch of apartments, and my wife manages all the apartments, and she manages the studio, and she's a busy lady, and she's really good at it. I've always said she's got her black belt in studio management. And anyways, I had a question for her about 6-7 months ago. I asked her about the fact that we always had a long history of almost zero hassles with with tenants. If you talk to anybody in real estate who's been there, done that, they'll tell you the same thing. They'll tell you a whole bunch of horror stories to do with tenants. And I remember talking to a lawyer once who said, 99% of your success in having a good building is picking the right tenants. If you get anxious, if you make a mistake, if you get too eager to put anybody in, there's a good chance you're going to let the wrong people in. So I asked my wife, I said, how come we never have any problem tenants? I know, and she knows, and we talk about this all the time, we have a system in place, and we've been doing this for 20 plus years, where if we have a vacancy, we advertise it, and we ask them to, if they're interested, a couple things we do. First of all, if we make an appointment for them to come and see the apartment, my wife always asks them, please text me when you're on your way. So if they don't text, she won't go. So she puts in a little barrier to entry. So there's that. The second thing she does is we have them fill out an application if they're interested in renting it, and that's pretty standard. But we always ask them for at least 2 references. And she actually calls them a lot. The references are previous landlords. You don't go to the previous landlord, it's the one to previous. That's probably going to be your best source. Because the most recent landlord may be trying to get rid of them because they're a pain in the butt. There's that. So, however, 80% of the weight of how she makes her decision isn't necessarily based on those. 80% of the weight is based on her gut feel. What does she feel about these people when she meets them? If she gets a bad feeling, she won't let them in. And my uncle said the same thing. He's done a lot of deals, and he says when the deal gets pitched to him, if he doesn't feel right about it, he won't do it. He says every time he's gone against that feeling, it's blown up and backfired. So remember that. Trust your gut feeling. Now, I think that this is something that you hone with experience and you get better at. All right, the second rule is never chase a deal. This was something that I've experienced. I kind of knew about it, and my uncle, again, reminded me of this on our road trip. He mentioned never chase a deal. It's one of the worst things you can do. So I remember years ago, back in the early 90s, when I was doing a lot of wedding bridal shows. I remember one time I had a young lady who looked kind of interested. She asked the right questions. She was getting married like in a year or so. And I decided I'm going to follow up and call her. And the whole thing just blew up. And now that's not to say you shouldn't follow up with the right information, but I think I appeared too eager, and she sort of took advantage of me that way. And I can't remember now whether or not it worked out. All I know is that it was not a good situation. So if you look too eager, you look too like you're salivating to make the deal work. It doesn't look good. And again, that's not to say you don't follow up with good information. If you have a lead that comes in, they're inquiring about photography, whatever it is, headshots, commercial, wedding, family, it's not to say you don't reply with the right information or possibly follow up with a good resource or information-rich video to help them make the decision. But if you pursue it too much, if you look too eager, it's not a good thing. You get better at this with time. You have to appear confident. You have to appear strong. You have to appear autonomous and confident, So I think that's important. Okay, the third rule is, I've never heard of this one before, but my uncle told me this one a couple months ago as we were on the phone having a conversation. We often talk about business stuff. He wants to know how business is and whatnot. And he said something that he told me a story about some land he was going to develop recently. He still has some land, so he still sort of plays in the game. And he was going to develop a condo complex. And he met with the engineers, and they designed some initial layout ideas. And he said it was just wrong from the get-go. So he just decided to can the whole thing. It's not going to work. I said, well, why'd you do that? He said, well, I have learned in life that if I'm doing a deal or if I'm doing a project, and if it starts off on the wrong foot, that usually is a bad sign. That usually means it's going to end up on the wrong foot. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before. And I thought about in my own life, and whether or not it's in real estate or running a photography studio, and it doesn't happen that often, right? So most of the time, everything is done right. People come in, they're usually legitimate. However, once in a while, somebody will come in and you can tell by their questions and the direction they want to take, say, a family photo shoot into or a wedding booking into. You could tell that, all right, there's a few red flags that are going on. Let's call that gut feel. My intuition is telling me there's something a little bit sketchy going on here. These people are up to no good. And it takes it to the next step, and you're like, no, this is not working out. What they're asking is totally irrational, and you got to be willing to just drop the whole thing. And I've done that. And this is, again, harder to do when you're starting out. It's a skill set that's worth remembering, keeping in mind, and focusing on as far as basic rules are. So trust your gut, your intuition. Never chase a deal. Never look too eager, And if a deal starts on the wrong foot, it usually means it's going to end up on the wrong foot. So anyways, these are some basic thoughts to do with business. Hopefully I've given you something to think about. If you have your own takes or questions, put them in the comments section before. I want to know what you have to say. And, tell me what you think. And hit the like button or subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. All right, guys, thanks.